looking there, right side of your screen there, at the president's most recent social media effort. That's a repost of a news report headlined, Trump orders CENTCOM to, quote, open the gates of hell after U.S. troops killed. Right now, for the 12th straight night, there are airstrikes underway. No indication, though, to what extent. Joining us now, the Massachusetts Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton, who sits on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman Moulton also is a Marine Corps veteran who served 4 tours of duty in Iraq. Congressman, thank you for your time tonight. When you see a post like that, the president reposting, he's ordered CENTCOM to open the gates of hell. There is a 12th night of attacks, 12th round of attacks since the ceasefire broke down. Is that the answer here?
No. I mean, he's starting more attacks. He's inviting more attacks in return. He's getting us deeper into a war that he's losing across the board, a war in Iran that's been an utter disaster for everybody except Iran, and maybe also except for China. China's thrilled that we're bogged down in another war in the Middle East. And every time this war escalates, more American lives are on the line. This is not a solution.
I want to tap your experience, Marine veteran, 4 tours in Iraq, including serving at the side of General Petraeus during that conflict. Today, the president was in Dover, Delaware, for what he concedes one of the hardest things to do as President of the United States, a dignified transfer ceremony, welcoming home war dead men and women, young men and women mostly, who have volunteered and then given their lives. He flew from there to a rally in Georgia and called this a skirmish. Is this a skirmish?
No, it's a war. And he's been calling it for a war from day one. He only started changing his tune on the terminology when he started running into legal trouble with Congress because Congress did not authorize a war. And that's why I have been pushing, along with some other veterans, to have another war powers vote in Congress. We're hoping it happens tomorrow, to go on record and to say once again that Congress is against this war. We're against this escalation. This is not the way that we secure Iran's nuclear program. This is not the way that we curtail Iran's power. Iran is more empowered than they have ever been. But I want to say something else, John, because you brought up this dignified transfer. After this transfer, Trump put words in the mouths of the troops who had died, saying they didn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Speaking as someone who was sent to war by politicians in Washington, D.C., the idea that politicians, that a president would tell my family what I was thinking when I died is unbelievably offensive. I served with a lot of Marines who disagreed with Bush's war in Iraq. You're speaking to someone who was an outspoken critic of the war in Iraq. And the idea that President Trump would treat these troops as pawns in his political game is just disgusting.
You mentioned trying to get a war powers resolution passed again. Republicans also are trying to make sure they have the votes to get the Pentagon more money. Secretary Hagsis was up there making the case for billions and billions more yesterday. There were some votes in the House today. My reading of that is that the Republicans so far have that funding on path, and then it goes over to the Senate. Do you have any hope that you can find enough Republicans, either in the House or your allies over on the Senate side, to stop the funding or at least put strings on it?
I mean, we're trying really hard. And the interesting thing, John, is if you came into the classified behind-the-scenes meetings that we have on the Armed Services Committee, you'll actually hear a number of Republicans, especially Republican veterans, asking very tough questions of the administration. But then they go out in public and just support the administration's policy. So the lack of political courage in Washington is just unbelievable. We need to confront this administration in a bipartisan way because Americans are dying and there's no path to winning this war. I mean, that's the big problem here. Iran is a serious national security threat. I've seen Iranians kill Americans in Iraq with my own eyes. And yet Iran is more empowered. They literally are strangling the world economy. Oil prices are going up. They're now asking American taxpayers to foot the bill for this losing war when costs are rising for everybody here at home. This is just a disaster across the board. And the idea that doubling down on this disaster is going to make it better, it just doesn't make sense.
I want to ask you a question. You put it in my head by what you said earlier about your own service, being someone who was sent to war. By war, the Iraq War became quite unpopular, became a very big deal in both the 2006 and the 2008 elections. We're about 15 weeks away from an election in this country. I want to ask you how you deal with it, because you understand what it's like to be serving overseas in uniform while the politicians back home are debating. And you are against a war now that is very unpopular in the country, but you also understand how some young man or woman wearing the uniform overseas who might support it, might oppose it. I assume you get a little angry, you get a little nervous sometimes when the politicians back home are debating what you're doing as you risk your life every second. How do you personally handle that? Sticking to what you view as your principles and your opinion, but understanding that somebody wearing the uniform where you were years ago is listening.
You know, there's nothing more that we wanted on the ground in Iraq, even those of us in the middle of a war we disagreed with, than for politicians to tell the truth and to ask the tough questions and to ultimately know what they were doing when they asked us to risk our lives. I mean, I fought in a war that shouldn't have happened if people in Washington had asked those tough questions. I mean, John, I'm running for Senate against Senator Markey, who voted for that war, who voted to send thousands and thousands of Americans to die before asking the tough questions about whether we needed to fight that war. So we can have debates in Washington about policy. That's what we're supposed to do. We can have serious debates about whether we should continue this war. But what the troops demand more than anything is for us to actually ask the tough questions, to demand answers from the administration and ultimately get the truth. We need the truth, and we're not getting the truth from Trump or Hegseth with the Iran war.
Congressman Moulton, thank you for your time tonight, sir. Appreciate it.
Good to see you, John.
Up next for us,